All right, so we are diving into incentives today.
Okay.
You know those little nudges and rewards that are kind of designed to shape how we act?
Yeah.
You sent over this chapter, and it is really comprehensive.
Hmm.
It really digs into how they work, but more interestingly, like when they don't work.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack some of the core ideas from this material.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at research to try to understand, why sometimes these incentives, they work like they're supposed to, but other times they totally miss the mark or they even backfire.
Yeah, at the heart of it, we're trying to understand, how do these incentives affect what we do?
Right.
And what your sources highlight is that although we all have our own preferences, our motivations aren't always totally selfish.
Okay.
Social considerations can play a big role.
Yeah.
And so these incentive contracts are kind of like tools to try to guide those complex human behaviors.
Okay, so let's start with a foundational concept from the reading.
Sure.
Principal agent model.
Okay.
Can you break that down for us in simple terms?
Yeah. Think of it like this. You have someone who wants something done. That's the principal.
Okay.
And then you have someone who's going to do it. That's the agent.
Okay.
A classic example is an employer and an employee.
Got it.
But the tricky part is that the employer can't be with the employee every minute of the day.
Right.
So they can't see perfectly how hard they're working.
Hmm.
Also, the employee's personal goals might not totally align with what the employer wants.
Right, of course.
And so this gap is where you have the potential for what economists call moral hazard.
Moral hazard.
Yeah.
So that's the risk that an employee might slack off
Exactly.
or act in their own best interest, even if it's not the best interest of the employer,
Yeah,
because their actions aren't totally visible.
precisely.
And that brings up some really fundamental questions that your material explores.
Yeah.
Like, if you're an employer, will your employee work hard if they're just getting a fixed salary?
Right.
What if you pay them for each unit that they produce?
Yeah, like a piece rate.
Right. So you would think that a variable wage where you link pay directly to the output, that would always lead to more effort.
Yeah, that's the basic economic assumption.
Right.
But your sources point out that it's actually way more complicated than that.
Right. It really depends.
It really depends on a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a really fascinating real-world example.
Okay.
Safelite Autoglass.
Safelite Autoglass.
Yeah. So your material dives into this really insightful study by an economist named Edward Lazier
Okay.
in the year 2000,
All right.
looking at Safelite Autoglass.
Uh-huh.
Back in 1997, they were the biggest auto glass installer in the U.S.
Wow.
Huge number of installers on their payroll.
So what was the situation before they changed things up?
Well, these installers, they were on a fixed hourly wage.
Okay.
And what Safelite noticed was that, on average, each installer was only doing about 2.5 windshield replacements per day.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Each installation usually took less than an hour.
So there was this big gap between potential output and actual output.
Yeah. A real opportunity to boost efficiency.
Huge opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in 1993, Safelite decided to shake things up and introduce this new way of paying their installers
Right.
called the Performance Pay Plan.
Performance pay plan or PPP?
Yeah, or PPP.
So how did this new system work?
Okay, so they switched to a piece rate.
Okay.
So the installers would get around $20 for every windshield they installed,
Okay.
and they would measure this weekly.
Right.
Now, here's a super important point.
Okay.
They kept the original hourly wage
Yeah.
as a guaranteed minimum.
Okay.
So they didn't totally switch over to pure performance-based pay.
Right.
They still had that safety net.
A little bit of security there.
Exactly.
So what happened when they put this change in place?
Well, this is where we see the potential upside of incentives.
Okay.
What did Lazier's study find?
Well, it looks like the study showed a clear increase in productivity.
Okay.
It seemed like this new piece rate system really motivated the installers to work more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to them installing more windshields.
Yeah.
So that direct financial link, it looks like it had the effect they wanted in this case.
Right.
So the takeaway is that in certain contexts, aligning pay with output can significantly boost how much people actually produce.
That's right. A pretty straightforward example of incentives doing what they're supposed to.
Right.
But your material takes a really interesting turn here.
Okay.
It explores whether small incentives can actually have the opposite effect.
Okay, so this is where it gets really counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because it challenges this very simple idea that more money equals more motivation.
Right.
So let's talk about this IQ experiment
Okay.
by Nisi and Restatini in 2002.
Okay.
What did they have these students do?
Okay, so they had university students take a test that was kind of like an IQ test.
Okay.
And one group, they just paid a fixed amount for participating.
Okay.
But the other groups were offered a piece rate,
Okay.
like a small amount of money for each question they got right.
So it was like a bonus for each correct answer.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what makes this so interesting is how these different levels of small incentives affected how well they did on this test.
Okay.
The key takeaway here is that sometimes these small monetary incentives, they can be ineffective or even harmful.
So the students that got paid per correct answer, they didn't always outperform the ones with the fixed payment?
No, not always.
Okay.
Sometimes offering a very small incentive didn't really improve their scores.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even their performance seemed to be worse than the group that got no extra incentive beyond just showing up.
Wow, that is so surprising.
Yeah.
It really does go against that simple economic intuition.
Right.
They also ran a similar experiment looking at fundraising with high school students, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So in this one, they had different teams of high school students, and their job was to raise money for a cause.
Okay.
And they offered different levels of payment to these teams based on how much money they raised.
Okay.
Now, a key detail here
Okay.
is that this payment, it came from the experimenters themselves.
Okay.
It didn't reduce the amount of money that was donated to the actual cause.
Got it.
So the question was, how do these different ways of structuring the payment, how do they affect how hard the students try to raise money?
So did they find that more money for the team meant more donations?
No, not always.
So again, it wasn't just a straightforward more money equals more effort.
Exactly.
So why would these small incentives sometimes backfire or just not work?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right.
And your sources go into some key psychological theories that might explain this.
Okay, let's start with the cognitive evaluation theory,
Okay.
which was developed by Deci and Porak.
Yeah.
What's the main idea behind this theory?
This theory basically says that as humans, we have this need to feel competent and in control of our actions,
Okay.
like self-determination.
Self-determination.
Yeah. So when we do something we enjoy or find interesting, we feel a sense of intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
But when you introduce an external reward,
Mm-hmm.
it can kind of shift how we see why we're doing it.
Right.
Like the activity no longer feels like something we're doing because we want to,
Yeah.
but something we're doing to get the reward.
Right.
And this can actually undermine that intrinsic motivation
Okay.
and make the activity less appealing.
So the reward kind of like crowds out our internal drive to actually do well or to enjoy the task for its own sake.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so then there's the self-perception theories,
Right.
like the one by Lepper and Green.
Mm-hmm.
How does that help us understand this?
Okay, so these theories say we don't always have a perfect understanding of our own motivations.
Okay.
Often we kind of look at our behavior and what's going on around us
Yeah.
to try to figure out why we're doing what we're doing.
Okay.
So if there's a big external reward, we might think, oh, I'm just doing this for the reward.
Right.
But the problem is if that reward goes away, we might think, oh, I never really cared about this in the first place.
Right.
That's the over-justification effect.
Justification.
It's like if you pay a kid to play with a toy they already love, when you stop paying them, they might not want to play with it anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how do these psychological ideas, how do they help us understand the results of those experiments we talked about?
Okay.
The Lazier study at Safelight,
Right.
the IQ and donation experiments?
Yeah, so in the Safelight case, the actual job of installing windshields, it might not have been a very intrinsically motivating job
Right.
for most people.
It's pretty transactional.
Yeah, it's more transactional. So introducing this piece rate didn't really crowd out a lot of intrinsic motivation.
Right.
But with the IQ test and the fundraising,
Mm-hmm.
there might have been some intrinsic motivation there.
Yeah, like the students might have wanted to do well on the test.
Yeah, the desire to perform well.
And the other students wanted to contribute to the cause.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
those small incentives could have actually shifted the focus away from those internal drivers.
Right, making it all about the reward.
Exactly. And making the task feel more like it was just about the reward.
Yeah.
So psychology gives us one set of explanations,
Okay.
but your material also looks at some economic perspectives on why these incentives might not always work.
Okay, so what are some of those?
So two economists, Benabou and Tirole, they argued in 2003 that offering big incentives can actually signal how unpleasant or difficult the task is.
Like if an employer offers a huge reward.
Yeah, the employee might think, wow, they must really need me to do this.
Right.
So it must be terrible.
Yeah.
And this negative signal can then decrease the employee's motivation and how much effort they want to put in.
Right. It's like if someone offers you a ton of money to clean out their attic, you're immediately like, oh, it must be really bad.
Exactly. The offer itself tells you something.
Exactly.
And then economist Felix Sluka in 2007, he explored how incentives can also signal things about social norms
Okay.
within a company or a group.
Mm,
Like offering a fixed wage might signal that the employer trusts their employees
right.
to be fair and put in effort.
Right.
And this can encourage more cooperative behavior. But if you switch to a very performance-based system with lots of monitoring,
Okay.
it can signal that the employer thinks everyone's selfish and needs to be controlled.
Right.
And this can actually make people less cooperative.
It can backfire.
Yeah, the design of the incentive scheme communicates something beyond just the money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So your sources then go beyond just financial incentives
Yeah.
and start looking at how other factors like control mechanisms can influence behavior.
Right, because it's not all about the money.
Right.
So this experiment by Ernst Fair and Armin Falk in 2006, they looked at how people reacted when a principal set minimum performance requirements.
Okay. What did they find?
They found that principals were often hesitant to set really high minimums,
Okay.
probably because they thought the agents would react negatively.
Mm-hmm.
And they were right. Sometimes when they set these minimums, the agents actually reduced their effort.
Almost like out of spite.
Yeah, like they resented it or felt like their freedom was being taken away, even if they would have done that much work anyway.
It's like when someone tells you you have to do something,
Correct.
even if you are already planning on doing it, it makes you less inclined.
Exactly.
Okay. Then there was this 2015 study by Agna Kajikaide and Jana Berner.
Yes.
And they used this real effort task where people had to type sequences of numbers.
Yeah, that sounds tedious.
It does.
What did they find?
Well, it looks like they found that on average, setting a minimum performance requirement didn't really change the overall output that much,
Okay.
but it did affect how performance unfolded over time.
Okay.
Now, this is interesting.
Yeah.
They also had a condition where the work benefited a charity.
Oh, Doctors Without Borders.
Yes, Doctors Without Borders.
How does that change things?
So it looks like when people knew their efforts were going to a good cause, the negative effects of control basically disappeared.
Oh, wow.
The minimum performance requirement didn't seem to demotivate them
Interesting.
in the same way it did when the task was just for like personal gain
Right.
or for an anonymous employer.
So when people feel like their work has a positive impact, they might be more okay with some direction.
Right. They're not just in it for themselves.
Exactly.
So this brings us to the idea of social incentives and
Yeah.
corporate social responsibility.
CSR.
Yeah. So can this idea of doing good actually motivate employees?
That's a great question.
Especially because, the economist Milton Friedman famously argued that the main responsibility of a business is to increase its profits.
Right.
But despite that, we see companies spending a lot on CSR initiatives.
Yeah, they do.
So Agna Kajikaide and Felix Lika, they did this experiment in 2017
Oh,
to look at this,
Mhm.
specifically looking at the impact of a principal making a charitable donation to Doctors Without Borders on an agent's effort.
Interesting.
So what did they find? Did the charitable act affect how much effort the agent put in?
Okay, so their findings showed that in many cases, a donation by the principal did make the agent work harder.
Really?
Yeah, and the intention behind the donation seemed to matter.
Okay, how? So,
When the principal actively chose to donate, it had a bigger positive effect
right, okay.
than when the donation was like random or automatic.
Interesting.
They also looked at whether the principal's wealth mattered.
Okay. And did it?
The results about wealth were kind of complex,
Oh,
but that they suggested that how generous the donation seemed might have influenced the agent's response.
okay. So a wealthier person donating a small amount might not have the same effect.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then we have this really cool study by Alex Imus in 2015,
Okay.
which directly compared whether people work harder for themselves or for charity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He used this hand dynamometer task.
What's a hand dynamometer?
It basically measures your grip strength.
Okay.
And he changed up who got the reward.
Okay.
And he found something really interesting.
What was it?
When the incentives were pretty low, people actually put in way more effort
Right.
when the reward went to charity.
Than for themselves.
Yeah, than when it was for them.
Yeah.
But this flipped when the potential rewards got bigger. Then self-interest took over.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it seems like social incentives, they work best when the personal financial stakes aren't too high.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So as we start to pull all of this together, your sources end with a broader discussion of, when and why incentives work or don't work,
Yeah.
drawing on a paper by Nisi and others from 2011.
Right.
What are some of the big takeaways from all this research?
One of the big things they highlight is that incentives can have these unintended negative consequences.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, undermining intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
or changing how people see a task.
Right, like that Daybear example,
Yeah, exactly.
where the fine for being late actually made it seem okay to be late as long as you paid.
Yeah, it's crazy how incentives can change social norms.
Totally. What was rude before is now just a transaction.
Exactly.
And your material also points out that incentives might work in the short term,
Right.
but then have negative effects in the long run once you take them away.
Exactly. That temporary boost might not last.
So it's not really a sustainable change.
Right.
They also talk about the two sides of monetary incentives,
Yeah.
the direct price effect, where the incentive just makes the behavior more appealing,
Right.
and then the indirect psychological effect, which can be really complex.
And unpredictable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we saw a really good example of that in the Frey and Oberholzer-Gies study from 1997,
Yeah.
where offering money to host a nuclear waste site actually made people less likely to do it.
Yeah, that one was wild.
It is crazy.
It shows how incentives can have these hidden negative meanings.
Right, like the offer seemed to say this is really risky or you're betraying your community.
Exactly.
And then there was Myers' research in 2007 on matching donations,
Yeah.
where they saw an increase in giving at first,
Right.
but then a decline in the long run.
Yeah, so it messed with people's intrinsic motivation to give.
What about incentives in schools?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Right.
That's a hot topic.
So do they actually lead to better attendance and grades?
Well, the research is mixed. They do sometimes work for attendance and enrollment,
Okay.
but their effect on effort and achievement is less clear.
Okay.
It's also worth noting that a lot of these studies, they use really big incentives,
Okay.
probably to try to counteract those psychological downsides.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, last thing.
sure.
What about using financial incentives to encourage healthy habits?
Oh, like quitting smoking or exercising.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the study by Volpe and his colleagues in 2006 showed that money could get people to quit smoking in the short term.
Oh.
But once the money stopped, most people started smoking again.
Okay.
But the 2009 study by Charnas and Nisi on exercise that suggested that if you pay people to go to the gym repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
it could actually help them form a habit,
Really?
especially for people who didn't usually go to the gym.
So basically forcing them to go enough times can make it stick?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple yes or no whether incentives work.
It's way more complicated than that.
Right. It depends on so many things.
Yeah, like how big the incentive is,
Mm-hmm.
what the task is,
Right.
what motivates the people involved.
And even like the social and cultural context.
Exactly.
It's not just the money, it's everything around it.
right.
So it seems like the main message from your sources is that incentives can be a powerful tool,
Yeah.
but they're not a magic bullet.
Nope.
And they can have these unintended and sometimes negative side effects.
Exactly.
So if you want to design a good incentive system, you have to think about all of that.
Absolutely.
Wow, this has been a really insightful look at incentives.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It has. We've seen how they can boost productivity like at Safelite,
Right.
but also how they can backfire and undermine people's motivation
Yeah.
or send the wrong message.
This is definitely more complicated than we might think.
So much more.
Yeah.
And for you as someone who loves understanding complex topics,
Yeah.
you now have a much deeper understanding of how motivation works and the potential problems with just relying on external rewards.
Right. Hopefully you had some aha moments.
I did.
Seeing how psychology and signaling can really affect these incentive schemes.
Yeah, it really challenged some of my own assumptions.
Good.
So as we wrap up,
Okay.
if you were designing an incentive system, what do you think is the most important thing to consider beyond the immediate benefits?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Is it the long-term impact on people's drive?
Yeah.
Or the unintended messages you might be sending?
Mhm.
Or the broader social environment?
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does.
Thanks so much for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.